Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Guys Gone Bible. As you can see, I am in my car this time, and I thought since it's just me, maybe I'll try out a few different locations once in a while. I think this place is pretty good. It's nice and shady. It's about middle of the afternoon. It's a nice day. I can't put the top down, unfortunately, because it's a little bit too cold for that. So I think I'll keep it up or down anyway. Anyways, I just wanted to say that I am very excited for this topic today. Today we are talking about faith and worship. And before I start that, I just wanted to say welcome to Guys Gone Bible, a place where we explore, discuss, and teach various passages of the Bible and how we can relate to our lives. And so whether you're a longtime believer like me, or just starting out, or somewhere in between, I am glad to have you today. I can't say we are glad to have you today because I don't have my new co-host, who, by the way, I'm still, at the time of this recording, I am still praying for a new co-host. For those of you that didn't watch my last episode, my other co-host, Russell's, got married recently, and so he probably will not be able to join us anymore, at least as far as a regular co-host. But in the meantime, I am still praying for a new co-host. So for those of you that are watching, if I don't have a co-host by the time you watch this, then well, I could really use your prayers. So anyways, before we move on, I want to give you guys today's food suggestion. And last week it was my first recording in over a year. And so that's why I had 2 food suggestions. But this time, I think I actually do want to do 2 food suggestions again this week. So my first food suggestion, and the reason why I picked this item is because Russell, he hates pickles. He hates, it doesn't matter if it's dill pickle or any other whatever kind of pickle, he hates it. And so that's why this next item is inspired by him. And I think that he would especially like dill pickle Pop-Tarts. Not because he would actually like it. I just think it would be a funny food suggestion because in my mind, he actually loves dill pickles. And he, not only that, he loves dill pickle Pop-Tarts. So that's why I think he might like that. Now, for those of you that maybe want another suggestion and you're maybe a little bit healthier, then you get to have Caesar salad Pop-Tarts. And so, it's a slightly healthier option. But anyways, so we're not doing a turban of the day because Russell, he's not here anymore. But if I had to pick a turban of the day for him, I feel like I would get his old picture from when he used to work at the gas station. And it's like, for those of you that don't know, it's a deep, funny Indian joke humor that I use with him specifically because Russell is half Indian. And so I make all these kinds of jokes. When you go into a gas station and you see an Indian gentleman standing there with a turban and the whole thing. Well, Russell is half Indian and he has actually worked at 2 gas stations before. So that's why that joke is still funny to me. But if I had to pick a turban of the day, I think that maybe I would pick maybe something related to a combination of Easter and Cinco de Mayo, because Cinco de Mayo is actually, I believe, next week at the time I'm recording this. And so maybe he can have an Easter and Cinco de Mayo turban with the picture of him at the gas station with his other kind of turban on. And I will spare him the drama and the what else do you call it, perhaps the shock of me telling a joke like that when I've been telling jokes like that with him for many years anyway. So we're gonna get into our topic today, and today like I said, is going to be about faith and worship. And so I wanted to come at it with the angle of coming from more of a spiritual warfare aspect. And when I mean spiritual warfare aspect, I'm talking about how we talk about things like, putting on the full armor of God, and helmet of all that stuff. And although we're not going to necessarily talk about body of armor as much today, we're here. I have to address that. But as far as the topic, we want to come from a perspective of this idea of the notion between worship and war, where our worship to God is a way of making war in the spirit, as they call it. And so I want to start with an interesting quote by Dr. Chuck Pierce about this whole idea of war and worship, or the worshiping warrior. And that's what this book is. Now, this isn't a sponsorship or endorsement. I'm just showing you what the book is. And so I wanted to read a really interesting quote out of here. When we hear the word worship, many of us think of singing 3 or 4 hymns in a Sunday morning church service. Some of us picture quiet times or Bible studies. A few of us visualize prayer. The word warrior, on the other hand, easily invokes images of a person in the heat of combat. Perhaps we imagine Russell Crowe in the movie Gladiator, or envision army troops on the front lines in Afghanistan. Maybe we think of a person who battles in loosely defined wars against social nemesis, such as poverty, prejudice, and injustice. Perhaps as believers, we recall C. Peter Wagner's call to become strategic prayer warriors. While the words worship and war are familiar, they nonetheless produce extreme and opposing emotions. Seldom do we see the two work in tandem. As servants of God, we know that we are to worship Him. We also know that we fight in a spiritual battle. But a close look at the Bible reveals much about God's plan for worship in war. And so that's what I'm talking about here, with this idea of using our worship to do war in the spirit. And we're going to look to, or rather, our passage for today is going to be out of 2 Chronicles 20. So in this video, I want to talk about how understanding how to use God-given authority over demons, territories, and all types of sin in Jesus' name. So when we talk about this notion of combining our worship and war, we have this way of being able to not just conquer evil spirits, but how to overcome things in our life, how we can, like it said, conquer territories, or rather we call it spiritual territories, or at least in this sense. And so all of this comes with the idea of confessing sin, and oftentimes how we need to do that first before we do anything else. So I want to start by going into 2 Chronicles 2, chapter 20. Now, I don't have my Bible. I have a digital Bible, and it's on my phone, which I'm using to record with, so I can't read from it while recording anyway. But I'll just go ahead and summarize it for those of you that don't have your Bible in front of you. But 2 Chronicles 20 is a chapter about King Jehoshaphat, who was king over Judah, and he was one of 8 godly kings ranging from 930 BC to about 587 BC. And so when we talk about how certain kings who were doing right in the eyes of the Lord, Jehoshaphat was one of 8. And when we look back at 2 Chronicles 17, we see Jehoshaphat did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. There's also 1 Kings 22, 41 through 50, for those of you that want to do your own research. But anyway, so I'll just do a summary of the chapter. So King Jehoshaphat is king over Judah at the time. And I don't want to, by the way, it's really hard. Even if I did have my Bible in front of me, it would be hard for me to pronounce a lot of these names of these different people and places. So I'm just going to say Israel's enemies at the time were coming in from, different directions. And Jehoshaphat, he gets before the Lord. He says, Lord, we don't know what to do. And ultimately, we get to the verse that talks about how the battle is not yours, but God's. And so that's what that whole chapter is about. Now, I would say when we look at this chapter, one of our first observations is a urgent need for prayer. Jehoshaphat and people recognized their helplessness and turned to God right away. And so that's sort of the same similar thing that we have to do at times in our lives. When we have troubles and we don't know what to do, we may not necessarily have a literal army of people coming against us. But we have, as you and I both know, we have troubles in our own ways. And so coming to God urgently in prayer is the main focus here. I also want to talk about how an urgent need for prayer demonstrates that difficulties and challenges lead individuals and communities back to God. So our first observation was urgent need for prayer. Our second observation is the power of prayer. So when we notice here, one of the first things that Jehoshaphat did was that through prayer and fasting, he acknowledged his dependence on God. So when we live righteously and we come to God in our prayers, and a lot of times fasting is required, this is important to know, especially when it's a more urgent need for prayer. And that's what I'm talking about here. And God's promise of victory is a reminder that battle is God's and not theirs. This illustrates the efficiency of prayer as means of seeking divine intervention and guidance. And then the third key point I wanted to make is the importance of trust. And the first thing we notice about this key point is that the people acknowledge their inability to face the enemy. So when we think about how we can apply how things happened in this story, we can apply various scenarios and situations where similar things happen in our own lives. The next key observation that I wanted to make is God's response to prayer. This story shows that God is faithful to hear and answer the prayers of those who seek him. And the last two key points I wanted to make about how there was an unexpected victory, not to mention the importance of praise, which I'll get into in a little bit. So I would encourage you, go ahead and read 2 Chronicles 20, the whole chapter for yourselves. And I feel like when you read it, you'll definitely be very encouraged by that. And so the next part I wanted to mention is about the application here. What are the things that we learned from this chapter in the Bible that talks about King Jehoshaphat and everything that happened? And so one of the interesting things about this is that God sometimes puts us in situations when we are in over our heads to teach us to trust him.
Welcome to this edition of Another Time. For today's episode,
Wait, hold on. Russell!
What?
Are you pooping? No. Are you pooping in there?
Bro, I just got in here. Leave me alone.
Are you still pooping?
I'm about to.
Wait. Hold on. How about now?
thank you for watching this edition of Another Time. Goodbye.
Hey guys, as you can see, I am not in my car anymore. I had to leave where I was when I recorded the first half of this recording in my car due to some technical reasons. But I'm here now. I'm back in my studio, aka my living room. And I wanted to go ahead and take this opportunity to go ahead and do the second half and pretty much pick up from where we left off. Oh, and by the way, that last clip that you guys saw, that was from over a year ago, the last time when Russell and I recorded our last episode that we did. I think it was back in May of last year. And it's just one of those funny things that, when we're joking around with each other. I don't know. It's a guy thing. I don't know. I think. But anyway, it's just one of those funny things that we used to do together. And so, anyway, I'm really sad that he is not with me anymore. Now, he as far as he's still with us. Like he's still part of the channel. But Russell, as you remember, he is married now, so he won't really be able to join us anymore. But as far as his affiliation with the channel, he has more of kind of a behind the scenes role now. So he may, pop up once in a while, and we'll have him on as a guest. So that I'm really excited about that. So anyway, I wanted to pick up where I left off, and we talked about God, how sometimes He puts us in situations where we are in over our heads. And I remember this. Now, this is one example that I had right before. This would have been around Christmas time or the month of December 2024, before Russell and I recorded our first episode. And there was one instance where so as many of you maybe already know, I used to, not anymore, but I used to be a UPS driver. And I had my own route and everything. And there was a time when I was going through a lot of stuff with this so-called pastor of this unnamed co-host, who I will not mention, of this podcast. And I'll never forget this one time when I hadn't slept. I didn't sleep at all. I think I may have slept for 10 minutes one time. And you have to understand, for UPS drivers, the month of December is the peak season, as we call it. And it's the highest time of the year where we get more packages than usual. And so this ties back into my point about how God puts us in situations where we are in over our heads. So there is a point to this, trust me. But anyways, so I hadn't slept that whole night, and I get out of bed, get ready to leave for work. And one of the things that happened as I was getting ready, putting my uniform on, getting ready to head out the door, having not slept. And I remember praying to myself, okay, Lord, I haven't eaten anything. I haven't slept the whole night. I guess you're going to have to be the one to sustain me, because I don't know what else to do when I have hardly any energy to do anything. And now I can't, and I can't exactly call in because I'm required to be there. And so I go to work that day, and I look at my route on the computer. Guess how many stops I had on my route that day? I had a grand total of 265 stops on my truck that day. And I'm sure some of you are looking at me like right now, like, what? Yeah, 265 stops. By the way, I didn't pack a lunch. I don't know, because just in my dysfunction, I just put my clothes on, headed out the door, went to work, and then I showed up, and sure enough, it was a super heavy day that day. And I somehow, I don't know, through the grace of God, I was able to get through my workday when I didn't get a helper. And I had to do all of those stops by myself. And I actually got done somehow at a decent time. I think I got done around 7 o'clock or so. And I just, in this is an example of one of those situations I was in where I was way in over my head, and I had to put myself in a position where I had to trust God more. So a lot of times when you guys may have situations similar to that, whether it be in your relationships or maybe at work, or maybe you just, something comes up where it's just very difficult to deal with, you can follow the same kind of similar example. What I did is where you have to, pray, get before the Lord and say, Okay, Lord, this is really hard for me right now. Can you please help me? Can you please just help get me through this day? And, and this is one of those times where, I prayed for strength and courage to get through my day. And sure enough, I got it. And so when we relate this back to our passage in 2nd Chronicles 20, King Jehoshaphat had the same similar thing happen to him, only it was an entire army of people. And so stories like this teach us how to respond when we encounter situations that are too difficult for us to deal with. And so that's the point I wanted to make about that. Third little part of that goes with this is that oftentimes God never promises life will be easy. So now I wanted to switch over to the more musical part of this. Now, as you know, the title of this video is called Faith and Worship. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how worship music, or actually not worship music specifically, but mainly how music in general affects the brain. And there was a very interesting study by Harvard Medical. I'll post a link in the description if you guys want to check it out. But it was a very good article about how music has a way of affecting the autonomic nervous system. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically the autonomic nervous system is the system that controls all of your involuntary responses, like your breathing, your heart rate, that kind of stuff. And whenever you hear music, this is the system that gives you the idea of, there's danger or something's about to happen, or, like, for instance, like if you watch a movie, like let's say if you watch a scary movie, and you can tell that by when you watch a scene, you can tell how like subconsciously the music is telling you, like, oh, danger, or somebody's about to jump out of somewhere, or whatever. And so that's what I mean by how music affects your autonomic nervous system. And there's other ways too. Now, as a musician, I've been playing music for a little over 30 years now. And one of the things that I've learned about music specifically is that music, when tuned to a certain frequency, a sound frequency, it has a way of affecting your body in different ways. There's two types of frequencies that I'm talking about here. So there's your main frequency, which for those of you who are musicians know what I'm talking about, how you have what's called concert pitch. And concert pitch is when all of the notes are tuned to what's called a 440 hertz tuning. And I'm not talking about like hertz, like your body hurts. I'm talking about hertz, Hertz, hertz. And this frequency, the interesting part about this is I've actually have written papers and done speeches about this. And 440 hertz tuning is known for affecting the autonomic nervous system in ways that are not the same as when something is tuned to a 432 hertz tuning. And I don't really have time to go into all of the science and all of the deep math about it. I'll post a link in the description for what I'm talking about if you guys want to do like your own separate research about this. It's a very interesting topic because 432 hertz tuning it's like this very interesting science about how sound waves, it's sort of like you can call it a sort of frequency of everything, where these sound waves specifically have a way of permeating everything in a way that actually heals and restructures your cells and all kinds of stuff that go along with that. Now, the point I wanted to make about this is that music, specifically worship music, has a way of changing your mental and emotional state, not to mention your spiritual state and all the ways that go into that. And one of the interesting things that I know about this is that I have actually heard people say that music doesn't affect them. And it's almost laughable how somebody would say that, because I'll never forget this one time I met a guy that was the brother of this other church friend that I had. And he told me, yeah, music doesn't affect me. It's like, I just like the beat of it, or I just whatever I hear a song, but I just filter all the lyrics out of it. And you're like, no, you don't, dude. And literally what's funny about this? Literally the day after he said that, he turns on a song that he likes, and he's tapping his foot, he's banging his head. So clearly the music is affecting him. And so that's what I mean by, that's why I was saying it was pretty laughable that somebody would say how music doesn't affect them when it clearly is affecting them. And so when we put the two together about how music not only affects the brain, it affects a lot of things that go along with that. This is how we can use music to affect ways on how we can make war in the spirit, as I mentioned earlier. And so one of the things that I mentioned earlier is I talked about the armor of God. And I just realized too that I made a mistake and I called it the body of armor. Sorry, I meant to say armor of God. I even remember saying that I wasn't going to mention this when it actually needs to be mentioned. And the reference is in Ephesians 6, verses 10 through 17. And verse 17 talks about the sword of the Spirit, which is your word. And so when we use the word and we use our music and combine those two together, we can use those things to make war in the spirit. And so that's one of the profound things I wanted to say about that. And if the devil can attack your mind, he can take everything. 2 Corinthians 10:5 takes about how we should take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. And when life is submitted to God, this gives us the ability to resist attacks from the enemy. So anyway, I am not going to make this video particularly long this time. It's just me again. I am still praying for a co-host. Doing these recordings by myself is definitely not easy. Even though I am I don't know. For me, I definitely have no problem being in a camera. I have no problem public speaking or any of that stuff. But there's something about having a co-host where you can bounce ideas back and forth on. And today is one of those instances where I just don't have that this time. So anyway, I am still praying for a co-host, still praying that God would show me the right person that he would want to have with me on this podcast. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up today. If you guys have any prayer requests or any comments below, go ahead and comment them down in the box. And oh, by the way, and there was also one last thing I wanted to actually offer you guys that probably you have not seen or heard of before on any other podcast. But back in my third episode, the Dreams and Visions episode, I mentioned how if anybody wants their dream to be interpreted, they can post a comment in our Facebook fan page group. Or you can type in, if you want me to interpret your dream for you, go ahead and post your dream in the comment section below. And if you post it within a week's time after I upload the video, I'll go ahead and interpret your dream for you. And so those are just one of the things that I feel like would be a great way of getting to know you guys a little bit more, and then also me as well. And so if you have any dreams that you would like for me to interpret, be sure to leave all of your details in there, things that you remember. One of the things, if you do that, be sure to not only type what the dream was about, but also type what you were doing. If you notice any other kinds of things that stuck out to you in the dream, be sure to mention that as well. And so, anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're going to go ahead and close this video with Numbers 6:24 through 26. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord let his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance toward you and give you peace.